All right, welcome back to AI Data Mastery, where we explore how AI and data are reshaping B2B businesses. Quick thank to our sponsors, Data Accelerator and Evolve with AI. We appreciate you, and I'm your host, Jason Renno. Today on AI and Data Mastery, we're joined by a true powerhouse in the world of advertising and entrepreneurship. Tim Ringel is with us today. Tim is the founder and global CEO of Meet the People, an agency collective reshaping how brands connect creativity, media, and data in the modern digital era. He alone has raised over 150 million to build a global network of top agencies, serves clients like Google, Nike, and IBM. I'm sure you've heard of them, and has scaled multiple multinational firms to thousands of employees. And beyond that, he's also an investor in over 50 companies, and not just any companies, but we're talking about Airbnb, SpaceX, Spotify, OpenAI, and a slew of others. So without further ado, I'm extremely excited to have him here because he just seems like a guy who's positioned right at the intersection of AI and data and marketing, which literally explains our show and our target audience perfectly. So it's an honor to have you here, Tim. Welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Jason. I'm excited for the conversation. Thank you for having me.
So I tried to obviously do you some justice in the intro, but could you maybe elaborate a little bit more and give us just a quick background on yourself and how you got into marketing and acquiring companies, and tell us a little bit of the secrets that the normal intro doesn't share with us.
Right. I think the most entrepreneurs who have done a few things, they always have a history, right? We all have a history. What ultimately ended getting us where we are today and doing what we do today. In my case, I was always very interested in computers. When I was very young, I asked my dad when I was 11 my parents really, because I wanted a Commodore 64 like everybody. I'm from 76, so I really grew up in the 80s and the early 90s. And I wanted a Commodore to trade games on the schoolyard, and they bought me a PC. There was no games, right? So very early, I taught myself coding. And on the back of that, I just developed a massive interest in computers. And it was, probably what some teenagers are now thinking who are dabbling with AI, if I'm honest about it, right? Right time, right moment, right generation for the internet. I was versed enough in server infrastructure to actually administrate very large server systems for large banks by the age of 17. And that just got me onto the internet. And in the internet, then, everything was possible, even without money. So I built my first business in 98, sold it 12 years later, became a performance marketing agency ultimately, but it started as a coding shop. And the biggest challenge my friends and I had was to beat Google, because, Google was glorious at the time. So we built the first agency business really on the back of beating Google in their own algorithm by positioning companies in the search results, right? So SEO, you would call that today. And then on the back of that, I built an advertising agency in the performance marketing field with paid search, affiliate marketing, social media, programmatic later. Sold that, as I said, after 12 years, was 34, 33, something like that. And then had the opportunity to take over another business and scale that to 1,000 people with 25 offices in Europe, Middle East, and Asia. That company was listed in the stock exchange in Paris. And the fun fact is I ran a Paris stock listed company, but I failed 10th grade because of my French. So
there you go.
I wish at some point from then my French teacher would listen to some of these shows I do today. And I always tell that story with a big smile, because if I would ever meet her, I would definitely rub it in deep.
As you should.
I would. And then eventually I sold my part of that business again and moved to New York City, where I worked for 3 years for one of the large holding companies in the advertising space, Interpublic Group of companies. Loved some of it, hated a lot of it, because I'm an entrepreneur. It's very difficult for me to work in a large corporate structure. I'm just not saying too fast, but I'm too disruptive probably for a large corporate structure. And that inspired me, that the combination of building two companies in Europe that were extremely entrepreneurial, extremely on the edge of innovation, all the time. And then working in a large corporation for a few years, I really wanted to build something that was mine, that operated entrepreneurially, but at the same time has the professionalism I learned in large corporations to an extent, because certain clients, and my company is technically a B2B business, right? I'm an advertising agency. I acquired 10 companies. They're all part of my group. And each of those companies work with other companies. We don't sell our own products, right? We sell other people's products for those clients. So my source of new business is talking to other businesses. So I really wanted to do that in a more professional, in a larger scale than I've done it before, and started 4 years ago, building Meet the People 4.5 years ago. And this company now is only in the US and Canada. We are around 800 people after 4 years, and I have big ambitions. We want to at least double in size, if not more. The market allows. The market is going through a very interesting phase of disruption, just like lots of industries are. I felt I was in a lucky position 30 years ago actually, because that's where I started my first business. And I'm in a similarly lucky position now, where we see a massive disruption across even more industries, faster, as everything goes faster now. And I'm really envious to an extent of young people who get it and can start something in this disruptive decade, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. I was very lucky. I had early access to the internet from a European point of view, because I got access through my university. I didn't actually graduate from university because my business was already too successful. So I dropped out of uni. But
you just used the free
access to
Wi-Fi.
it. Exactly. No, it wasn't free. I still had to pay for the minutes. But at least I could dial into something to actually get access. I didn't have to subscribe to AOL, but I still had to pay for the phone minutes of my bundled ISDN lines, right? Anyways, long story short, gigantic companies were built on the back of the internet, of the disruption of the internet. And now gigantic companies are being developed on the back of AI. It's a similar but different disruption, right? So it's beautiful to see. And I think it's beautiful, and I get very philosophical about that, but I'm turning 50 next year. So it's beautiful for me, as someone who's turning 50 soon, so still has quite some years to go, ideally, knock, knock, to see two of those movements. It would have taken generations to have that before. We are in a very exciting period in time, from my perspective, if you embrace it.
I was going to say yes. If you want it to be. Now, if you want to try to go against the grain and fight it, then I think you're going to have a lot of black eyes and lumps and bruises over the next several years. But yeah, we had a gentleman on here. He's a angel investor. He runs his own family office, and he was one of the early investors in NVIDIA. And he was comparing it. He actually skipped over the internet, and he was comparing it to the printing press. It will change the world to the extent that the printing press did in, what was that, like the late 1800s, but pretty much the same perspective, where it is going to be exciting times over the next 5 to 10 years, if you embrace it and lean into it.
Yeah.
Now with that,
printing press was a good example, because printing press was the first way to make information available.
Exactly.
Mass audience. The internet was a way to make all information accessible, and now AI is the way for you to not having to read that information, but basically to answer every question instantaneously with all information on the planet, right? Mm-hmm. So it's an evolution. It's great you're saying printing press, because it is technically all an evolution of access to information, and with that comes a lot of geopolitical disruption, because and again, we're not going to go too philosophical here, but most governments, most countries, most dynamic of power has been with control of information over since humanity exists, right? And when information gets liberated,
when it's free, when the information's literally just freed, where everybody can access it, then
exactly. That's why it's so extremely interesting to me, from a consumer perspective, but also from an investment perspective, because once the stone starts rolling down the hill, it becomes really difficult to stop it at some point. And this is exactly what we're in with AI right now. AI was around for 30 years. IBM with Watson invented the idea of artificial intelligence. Not even the idea was out of books, but something tangible that you could technically look at. That was Watson, right? What Chat did is it just made Chat made it accessible to the masses. with something very simple that everybody understands immediately. Oh, this is cool. I can punch something, not going to forget what I told it before. Wow, that's big.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating.
It has direct access to the internet and everything, all this public information. It can store it. It's regenerative. It can continue to learn and get better. It's pretty remarkable. Now, leaning in towards, because obviously as a marketing agency, your clientele is other businesses, right? I mean, you mentioned, a lot of the clients that you work with, you're helping them sell their product. But I'm curious, how have you scaled so rapidly within the agency space? Because you hear about agencies and marketing companies going out of business on a daily basis. How are you able to establish those relationships, scale that business so quickly? And then also, how is AI incorporating? Because with a main topic on this show with B2B businesses is, where is the gap, or where is the handoff from where AI and automation then has to be turned over to an actual human relationship? Because in B2B businesses, you're talking about higher ticket products or services. You're talking about long-term agreements. We're not selling tubes of toothpaste or a pair of tennis shoes that an AI automation can get them to a cart and check them out. So I'm interested on your perspective of, where does AI and human relationship blend in that B2B acquisition process?
Yeah, you describe it really well from my perspective. B2B sales is obviously very different to B2C sales, but inherently you're still talking to the same people. If you think about it, right? The person who buys toothpaste, still the same people who sits in procurement somewhere and decides on $1 million deal to buy a service from a vendor, right? So
that's a good point.
It's people tend to forget that the person who purchases your services is still a human. And that's why a lot of, at least right now, Walmart is trying to change that with their AI-driven procurement infrastructure, right? But for now, let's presume it's still mostly human. 99.99% is probably still human decisions. So we should never forget that we actually do talk to a person, and that person has emotions, no matter if they're a professional B2B procurement person or if they are just a consumer running through a drugstore, picking up toothpaste and some ear picks, right? So, but to your question, number one, how do we grow rapidly? I mean, I have an unfair advantage that I have capital to spend, right? So I buy some of my growth, so it's inorganic, right? So I buy agencies or companies where I see the mix of the business itself, the client base, and the leadership team is going to be extremely compatible with what we do, what my beliefs are. And that helps. Why? Because in the end, I have 10 companies within my group. Each of them still holds their own identity. I've not bought them to change their identity, strip away their brand, change their culture. We own 100% of them, but each founder who sells to me gets a piece of my business as well. So we give them money and we give them a piece of my business, but they can run their business as independent as they like. But once we have a large opportunity, right, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it, we kind of activate the entire group. So I always make the example of the Avengers. You've seen the Avengers, probably Marvel.
I have teenage boys, of course.
Exactly. So the Hulk is out there, has his own, his own show. Iron Man has his own show. Like Captain America has his own show. They can all stand on their own feet. They can all fight evil, right? Or the next threat. But sometimes the aliens are landing, and really something hits the fan, right? So they all come together. And this is similar how I describe my company. I want each of them to be their own franchise. At the same time, I want us to come together when something really exciting happens. And this is where, as I said, I have 10 companies. So you can imagine 10 cultures built over. The oldest company is 40 years old. The youngest company is probably a few years old. So very different company cultures. Very different ways how to handle data. Very different ways how to acquire customers. Very different ways of operations. So what is the easiest way to help them is probably to let them keep it. So the easiest way is you strip it all out and you make it mine, right? I just say, oh, this is the new sales process. Oh, this is the new HR process. This is the new, but then you really lose the identity of Hulk, Iron Man, and and Captain America.
Yeah, you can't turn Hulk into Iron Man, right?
They're just the Avengers, right? Like, and that's a little boring. Like, how many of these movies do you want to see? So
that makes sense.
So what does that mean? We also use all kinds of tech platforms. Like one agency is really hooked into Google, the other ones are Microsoft, the next one really believes in Zoom. Like we're not necessarily changing that because part of their identity. But what we try to do is we try to have AI help us to make sense of it. So I look at how I describe it, because we are around 800 people. We have really, my AI strategy is 3-layered. I have 3 layers of AI strategy. The first layer, adopting the AI from the vendors we anyways use. For example, we've always worked with Google, we've always worked with Meta, we've always worked with Adobe, we've always worked with some of those vendors in the past 10, 20, 30 years that develop their own AI products, naturally so, because they progress into the AI world. So all of our people need to know how to use these tools. It's just like, well, before you had a pencil, now you have a ball pen, and in the future you have an iPad with a, so you have to progress in how you work. That's just normal. That's layer 1. It's not in our control. It's adoption of what's out there and what's already with the partners that we have certified, qualified, that are good partners. Not even negotiable, right? The second layer is the first generative AI layer, and that is bringing tools, identifying new work tools on the back of inefficient processes where we need a tool we didn't have before. For example, ChatGPT or other tools that make graphic design easier, or other tools that make sound design easier, or aggregation of data easier, whatever it is. So these are new tools, new technologies that we get on board with a clear purpose, and the purpose is operational efficiency, not to cut cost, but to do more work with the same amount of people, or take people out of repetitive, stringent work they shouldn't do. Nobody wants to scan travel receipts. Makes no fucking sense. Pardon my French, right?
No, don't worry. You can cut. Don't worry about it.
It's the most boring thing in the world. And just for disclosure, I have 800 employees, but I also have 3,500 1099ers who work for my organization.
Wow.
And these 1099ers, they travel all the time because we do a lot of experiential work as well. We do over 10,000 event activations a year in the United States alone. That is 300 a day. So imagine you have people traveling there doing the event. There's endless travel receipts. We're talking like hundreds of thousands receipts of gas, food, you name it, flights, whatever. So if my proof of concept for the second layer that AI works for us as an organization is operational efficiency and spending less money on garbage. Meaning, like, nobody needs to do this by hand. Nobody needs to be the reconciliation by hand. This can be automated. You might need your own agent. You might want a third-party technology. Has to be solved, right? Because what is going to create is my team is going to be happier. Because if you're honest with it, nobody wants to do that job, right? So I always say, if we can save thousands of hours on the repetitive work streams nobody wants to do, and we can spend more time with clients, naturally, so our business is going to grow. Even if we just spend that time on thinking about our clients, not even actually talking to our clients, our business is going to grow. So this is the second layer. It's the, I would say, operations layer.
Yeah, right? Focus on revenue generating activities, not mundane tasks.
More like, well, I don't actually tell them it's for more revenue generation. I tell the team, this is here to make your life easier. So you can decide what you want to spend your time on. If you get your normal work done within 6 hours instead of 8, and you want to spend more time with your kids, fair enough, right? But okay, if you want to take 2 hours to think about something new, a new product, or involve yourself into more client work, great, like, of course. And that the effect is going to be revenue growth, right?
So it's more free. It's more allowing more freedom and flexibility then.
For sure, especially in jobs where we are not billing times and material. Part of our business is times and material. If the person doesn't bill, we don't get paid, right? In other areas of our work, we make money even if people would just roll their thumb, technically, as long as nothing explodes, right? So there's different ways how it applies, but we have identified at least 15 items across our many people and many businesses where we have massive time suck. And the idea now is to use these new technologies that we have never used before, identify which one can help us to solve those, right? And we have a head of AI in our organization that is focused solely on that, not on the third layer. The third layer is separate. So that's layer number 1. Adopt what's already out there anyways with the people you already work with. So you progress from pencil to ball pen to iPad, right? That's kind of the idea. The second layer is find new technologies that make your organization future-proof, better operationally, and therefore people spend less time on garbage, more time on value, right? No matter if it's your own value or it's the company's value. The third layer is what makes us absolutely unique. Where are we the innovator? And that is our own products, proprietary AI-enabled products, tools, technologies. So we develop, I allocated a decent amount of money, a 7-digit amount of money in building our own AI-enabled tools. And we develop 6 tools right now. Each of these tools solves something very specific for clients, in terms of for all our clients, but specific to something we've not seen yet in the marketplace. And we built 6 of those tools. Some of them are going to work really well, and some of them are going to be crap. And that's why we develop more than one, because we're not a SaaS company. I don't plan to create a SaaS company that monetizes on subscription. I'm basically trying for my entire organization to be more innovative, show up different in a process of a pitch, like when a new customer wants to compare us to other vendors. What makes me better than the competition? Because layer 1 and 2, from my perspective, everybody's going to do. Layer 1 anyways, layer 2, you're going to hire an external consultant who's going to help you to do that, right? Worst case, or you do it internally. Layer 3 is when our hits the road. What is the clear differentiator of your proposition when you sit in front of a potential new client that closes the deal, right? So we spend serious money here, we spend serious money here, and the first layer is really adoption.
Wow, that is that's, I mean, you hit it spot on. It's a really, I guess it's such a simple but non-simple way to really explain it and break it out. And I think that's, to that point, I think that's one of the biggest problems a lot of businesses have with AI is they have this, I need to do everything at once, or it's going to solve every problem, or, you know, it's just kind of all the same, right? You know, it's like, oh, I need 10 AI agents. I want this, and this, and I want all this. And it's just like, I like how you break it down. And, you know, similar to, you know, through our AI consulting agency where we're working with clients, it's like, look, this could be a 3 to 6 month, a 12-month phased process. Let's go identify the largest gaps, fill those first. You know, very similar. It's, you can't, not every AI tool, or not just AI in general, doesn't all just fit into one bucket. And I love the way how you broke it up into 3 separate buckets.
It's super confusing. And I've seen this many times that organizations have the habit to either ignore it then because they're confused by the complexity of it, because technically AI could touch everything, but it doesn't need to touch everything. And who makes the decision what it should touch, right? So no, and with no disrespect, but no regular employee can tell you an answer, because nobody knows. Because the AI players, they spend so much money in beating each other on new features, on, like, we all know now Anthropic is better with Excel and ChatGPT's crap is Excel, right? But therefore ChatGPT writes a little bit better, therefore Anthropic writes a little bit less aggressive, I would say, right? So you get a sense, but tomorrow they could launch a feature and all of graphic design that you were doing in Canvas is now in Chat, right? Who knows? We really don't know. So it's when the more complex the problem is, the more simple you have to make it. Otherwise, you're not going to solve it, right? You have to go down to the simplicity of the problem ultimately, because it always boils down to one simple question. It's usually a left or right question, eventually, if you ask often enough. So we're trying to simplify it, not only for us internally, because otherwise we don't get anything done, but also, how do you explain an investor, what are you doing in AI? What's going to be the impact of AI? Give me a dollar amount. That's what everybody cares about, right? But you really don't know yet. Until you have proven it's either money saving or revenue gaining, we don't really know, right? So we're trying to do both, but more controllable. And each of those layers is a different control. The first layer is our head of IT, second layer is our head of AI, and the third layer is our head of product. So different people. So I kind of, you could also see it like you have a roulette table and you actually make 3 different bets. Instead of putting $100 on one, you kind of put like $33 on each and keep one for yourself.
Yeah, spread out your money a little bit and diversify, right?
And see what works. Yeah, correct.
Absolutely.
So, because you mentioned in the beginning, like, okay, for B2B sales, right? It's complex because ticket size is massive or can be really big. Like an average client for us is $500,000. A good client for us is multimillion-dollar, right? So we have 250 clients in the organization. The incubation period from a first conversation or an email outreach or call it any first touch point to being invited to compete against other vendors to actually winning the business can be anything between 3 to 18 months. That's the sales cycle, right? So how do you measure that? And touchpoint can be anything. It can be a trade fair, it can be a Google campaign, it can be an email blast, it can be an organic website type in, it can be, hey, somebody drops me an email, calls me, or a friend says, hey, you should talk to this guy, right? So the journey starts anywhere because we're dealing with humans. And my business is inherently a people relationship business. So 50% of our sales pipeline usually comes out of existing relationships. That means people moving jobs, or, oh, I've worked with this person 10 years ago, was my colleague. So a large part of our sales pipe comes through organic and relationships. The other 50 we have to hunt for, the other 50%. And that's the tough part. And that's where AI can do a lot of the heavy lift. So again, I'm not teaching anyone new sales tactics here, but let's presume you are specialized in one specific industry. Most of the public information can be researched on the internet. But who's actually doing that? Like, who has 5 researchers sitting there just pressing the internet for information before you walk into a potential client meeting or before you hit someone up on LinkedIn? AI can do that for you now. It takes a millisecond.
I was going to say in a fraction of a second.
Exactly. If I separate the sales process into research, initial outreach, warm conversation or interaction, to actually pitching and then eventually winning, a large part of the time should be spent on the beginning, research and qualification. Most of the time is actually spent on the second half because this is so complex. And you have to really, like, some good salespeople have cracked it because they have created their own systems. But in reality, you can have an agent doing most of the research work for you. You have an agent who can do most of the initial send out work for you, of like to trigger a contact or something like that. And the problem is all these tools are available to everyone. In a year's time, 2 years' time, already now, everyone who has a bit of coding experience and prompting experience can actually build their own agent. Mm-hmm. That's going to get even simpler down the road, right? So what's going to happen is B2B sales is going to be tougher and tougher. The reason is that all these weapons that were available before for a selected group of individuals, either the very experienced salesperson that has been moving jobs only every 10 years, down to the one who's already been a great coder where there's no entry barrier for that person, that's going to become public knowledge. It's like the iPhone, right? Nobody knew how to use all this stuff before. Now everybody knows how to use it. And AI is going to take away all the entry barriers. So that's going to mean that we already see it. Like, the amount of stuff I get on LinkedIn that's AI generated is terrible, right? It's absolutely terrible. So here's my kind of like 5 cents in that, because I talk with clients a lot about the pendulum in AI. We're going towards the extreme excitement right now, and the pendulum is going to swing back once reality kicks in, that now you're drowning in spam stuff that feels like a person but is actually not a person anymore. So we're going to go through that on calls, we're going to go through that on LinkedIn, we're going to go through that in emails, we're going to go through it in all kinds of non-in-person conversation. So the pendulum is going to swing back, and all of a sudden in person is going to come back really big, and we've seen it in experiential after the pandemic.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we've already started to see that, where people are starting to recognize, like, hey, this guy's just, I'm just one of 10,000 people this guy emailed today with his AI agent, versus somebody who, and even if you structure AI, I mean, if you do the research and do the upfront and the preparation, you can make the AI that much more powerful. But then, yes, I mean, talking to B2B businesses, I think that's the biggest, unknown right now, is how much can AI do, and then how quickly do we have to come in and establish that human relationship and that human connection? Like, where in the pendulum is my business? Are we 75% AI and 25% human connection, or does it have to be 50-50? Because, like you said, in the B2B space, it's you specifically, I mean, your clients are $500,000 to multi-million-dollar clients. You need that human interaction. You need that connection and that relationship. But at the same time, like or actually I'm interviewing her. I did a pre-interview. I'm interviewing her tomorrow, but it's called like big ticket hunting or something. And, she was going into a little bit in depth of how many decision makers are involved. If a client's coming aboard and signing a $500,000 contract with you, there's probably at least 6 decision makers or stakeholders in that, if not realistically, probably more. So how do you utilize AI to make sure that everybody's researched, everybody's involved, the whole situation? And it's kind of, in my previous life, years ago, I used to be in the mortgage business, right? And we used to tell, it's like the upside down triangle. If you do 90% of the work up front, it might be the boring, mundane work that now AI can do 90% of it for you.
That's the trick.
Now, as you get down to the bottom of the triangle, when you're actually trying to close the deal, everything there is to know. I mean, even just before we got on the call here, I go into AI, I put your LinkedIn URL in there, I put your website in there, I put the description that Valerie had sent over, and I put everything in AI. AI scans and now tells me I learn about everything about you in about 5 to 10 minutes before the show. It can write me the pre-show, and there's no reason, for example, for me to even have somebody on the show that I don't know about and have research, where, I mean, previously that would have taken me hours, right? Same thing goes when you're.
And that's what I'm trying to say. So when you think about how utilizing AI for B2B sales, like B2C, very often, I don't want to really say an exact number, but I would say the majority of B2C on lower frill items, on items that don't hurt the budget every day, right? Toothpaste, all the day-to-day consumables. The brands never had a relationship with the consumer. It was a 3-layer distribution model, meaning they sell it to a distributor, the distributor to wholesaler, the wholesaler to the store to the end consumer. The brand Unilever, Procter & Gamble, they never knew anything about their consumer. B2B is different. In B2C, trust was built through advertising. Super Bowl ad. This is a trustworthy toothpaste. Everybody's using it, right? Like some stats. So in B2B, it's all relationships until starting at a certain point, because you're talking big ticket items. You have multiple stakeholders. Nobody just decides over one toothpaste purchase, right? So AI is best utilized at this moment in time. And I do actually believe for quite a long time in the beginning of the phase, as you described it, in the research phase. Research, analyzing the data, preparing the human interaction, and then the human interaction brings it home. I can't even imagine us winning a client without actually having met the people in person, talked to them multiple times on video calls, telephone, send personal emails, make personal commitments. Like, it's normal in B2B. I do not, maybe I'm mistaken, maybe I'm too old, I do not see how AI is going to fake it. Because in the end, it's all about trust. If you trust someone with a multi-million-dollar deal, it's not only about, I need to place this order, I need to give a multi-million-dollar deal out. This is also a career thing for that person who makes that decision. If they choose the wrong vendor, their career can end, right?
Yeah,
so
they're fired and out of business.
I believe you're not going to trust an AI agent with your multi-million-dollar deal. I don't believe it. Or your company is so good in faking it that the salesperson is an AI agent, but the client doesn't know. That's also not a great start for a relationship.
No, because then I agree 100%. You don't want to insult people's intelligence, because you might be able to fake it or trick them for a minute, but at some point the AI is gonna slip up. There's gonna be some sort of glitch in the matrix, so to speak, that is going to give it away. And if you start off lying to your customer up front, I mean, it's obviously just not going to go well. And it's just, with the AI, there's no reason where I think a lot of what excites me about it too is you can actually like dig deeper. So it's not just, hey, some superficial information off a LinkedIn profile, but once you learn about that person's business or that niche or their specific clientele, then go deeper. Find out from AI, hey, find me the top 5 articles about this business. what are the biggest things in the industry that's hurting the industry, things that they haven't, like you can literally walk into there and not just be an expert on the people themselves, but the business, the niche, the industry, what's going on globally. You walk into a meeting and you're pulling up an article from CNBC a week ago that was about their business, and they're like, wow, I didn't realize you knew. I mean, it's just, having that information at your fingertips, being able to expedite that trust and credibility process, I think is huge.
Yeah, I can make an example that maybe is relatable on what we have built. One of the first tools we have built now this year, we launched it in April this year. We call it creative intelligence. We have a lot of clients who hire us for creative work, right? And creative work can be anything from a logo design to a website design to entire brand architecture for millions of dollars for a large bank out of New York City, for example, right? So the problem is creative, and that probably is with other services as well, consulting probably the same, is everybody has an opinion. The moment you sell creative, everybody's a creative. Like everybody in the room is a creative. Everybody has an opinion because everybody has a favorite color, right? And a favorite font. So my biggest problem with those moments where we would sit in a room with a chief marketing officer, head of creative on the client side was that it's extremely subjective. If you walk in there with 3 ideas and all these 3 ideas are the wrong color, you have a problem, right? So that's why you do ideation before with the client, like, oh, do you like this direction or that direction? So we just skipped all of that. So we created a tool that before we walk into the room has an AI-enabled tool, uses 8 different AI tech pieces, large language model, image recognition, all that kind of stuff, that basically scans all the publicly available assets of a client and then runs it against their largest competitor and then builds the audience. So the AI actually finds what this brand believes the audience they're talking to, let's say SMB banking, right? And then looks at these assets out of the lens of a potential SMB banking client and then rates it against the competition. So when we walk into these meetings and we are mega prepared, right? We walk in there, we have analyzed, the AI basically processes, scans the website, scans the assets, scans the videos, everything it can find on the internet, and then makes sense out of it. Takes around 48 hours. And then we have this beautiful analysis with everything broken down, from colors to fonts to design language, everything. And we walk into this room with a recommendation and a simple question. So the question is, do you want to be what you are right now? Do you want to be what your competitor is, or do you want to be something totally different, right? And all of a sudden you have a super objective conversation instead of a subjective conversation. It helps the sales process dramatically.
So, because you're not talking about shades of green in the logo, right? You're talking about big picture end result, like you've taken all the subjectiveness out of it through that
and you're
analysis
super
and
prepared.
competitor analysis.
And you're super prepared, and you can, and you're not, and you don't have to bother your people with doing all this work. Like this would usually take weeks, 2 weeks for 3 people to research all of it and then rank it, analyze it, at least, right? And we
but hold on, but still those 3 people, you're still getting their opinions and their subjectiveness while they're doing the research. So it even takes the subjectiveness out of that initial research or out of the equation.
Well, one could say that,
like you're saying, it's either left or right.
So, yeah. No, that's right. And that's a good example of the first 90% of this, of that process, right? Before you actually pick up the phone and talk to someone. That's all the research. And we've taken away the entire load of creative-led research that has to be done before we walk into a room for a pitch, right? That's just dramatic. We still have to build the presentation. So that's probably the next thing we want to partially automate, right? Because most of it is modular. But if you, as I said, we have 250 clients every given year, and we probably pitch on 500 clients a year, maybe 600. So if you think about the amount of ideas, data, PowerPoints, keynotes that are produced just to submit these things to 600 potential clients, because we have roughly a 53% win ratio on every piece of business that we pitch against. So I want to increase that, and that's why AI is going to help. But if you think about the mass of information that's created when your salespeople are out there, or even your client managers are out there pitching something to a client, the more we can make that readable for AI, accessible to AI, and then create modules I can take away probably 60% of the workload for them to put this stuff together. The last 40% is still the individualization, their own opinion, their experience, but some of the heavy lift can be taken away. That's probably the next step that we're working on right now.
Yes, very. I agree 100%. There is. Wow, what a great show so far. We honestly, I didn't. This is. I looked up and I was like, oh, what? Next, I'm 40 minutes into this, and I feel like we've been talking for about 10 minutes. I have a feeling. I mean, we could probably sit here and talk for hours, but we kind of got to wrap things up here. Is there? This was a phenomenal show, though. I mean, great information. I really appreciate you being here. As we sign off here, is there any other last kind of closing thoughts? I mean, we didn't even get into your investments. I feel like we have you back on for another show if you're willing to in the near future, and maybe more specify on the investment piece of it, what you look at when you're investing in companies, specifically AI. I have numerous questions just for that alone. So we'll connect and schedule another time if you're open to it. But staying on track with what we've talked about today, are there any closing statements or anything else that we forgot to touch on?
Yeah, I think one thing that I want to take away from people is fear. I know that inherently, of course, with change, there's a lot of fear, but I'm not talking about the individual fear of losing your job because of AI. That's something, again, that's not in my control. I recently read a book given to me by a friend, and one of the main takeaways, and sometimes people really need to come to a point in a book of 200 pages, was don't worry about the stuff you can't control, right? So we can't control what AI is going to do to the economy, to the industry. What we can do is we can think about how does it help me to be successful. So when I talk about fear, I'm not talking about the disruption of the workforce fear, because I can't control that. I can only control it in my microcosm. When I talk about fear, is that people think, oh crap, like a client's never going to find us again because now Google search is dead, and everybody's going to use chat. Like, how are they going to find us? Do people just going to basically tell the AI to find a vendor? The beauty is, if you peel the onion, if you peel back all the layers, right? All the big AI companies are spending a ton of money, and they're not making enough, so they're losing money right now. So the best way for them to stop losing money eventually is to monetize what they do, not in subscription, but in ways for companies to procure access, just like you do it with Google today. You run Google Ads because you want access to people who are pre-qualified, who already identified themselves looking for something, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why we buy Google Ads. Chat and traffic are going to do exactly the same thing. They're going to monetize the audience once they hit enough users, and the threshold is usually 1 billion something. So
you're saying just like agencies running ads on Google, you're going to have sponsored ads and ads. Not exactly the same, but
it might not be in the traditional sense how we see sponsored ads today on Google. It might be more like right now, chat gives you really one answer, right? But you could also simply imagine chat asks the follow-up question: do you want to go down this route or that route?
Yeah. Do you want us to recommend you a local plumber or an XYZ company?
Exactly. Do you want to go with the guys you researched last week and they have 5-star ratings, or do you want us to explore more? Click here, right? Done. All of a sudden you're in the paid stream, but it's consensual. So I don't think it's going to be as simple as it is with Google, but it's obvious that they're going to monetize, because as you can easily research how many billions of dollars have flown into these companies, eventually they're going to have to IPO. And the only way to really be successful in an IPO, yes, there's a little less pressure than with Google was at the time. The main driver for IPO of chat and others is not really that they can't find capital. It is more that the employee is going to run away because they're going to get cash from Meta if they switch jobs, or the investors, Acquire and others who have put billions in, they need to take their capital out at some point, and they can't just do it in secondary market deals. So there is eventually a path to IPO for those companies in the next 2 years, I think, some of them. And that means that they're going to have to show quarterly results, and it's not only user growth, it has to be profitability at some point. So they're going to have to monetize the user base. Hopefully not as aggressive as Meta does it, because it's annoying, but hopefully a nice mix between what Google did in the beginning and what AI could do in the future.
Very great stuff. Awesome. Well, as we sign off here, we really appreciate everybody listening. I think this has been a phenomenal episode, a ton of value. I mean, whatever space you're in, if you're in business period, I think there's a ton of value added to this episode. So we really appreciate you being here, Tim. Thank you again to our couple sponsors, Data Accelerator and Evolve with AI. Don't forget to like or subscribe here on the YouTube channel and our social media platforms. Don't forget to jump over and connect with Tim on LinkedIn, as well as check out his agency, Meet the People. And appreciate everybody being here. Thank you, Tim, again. And can't wait to have you back on the show in the near future.
Thank you, Jason. Yes, I would love to. Thank you.
Perfect. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.